Hi people, hope you're all well. So I came across a meme which I think kind of provides a good base for this video. Um, it got me thinking, so I guess it's effective in that sense. I disagreed with its premise, but it got me thinking. And basically it showed two lions, and one of the lions was in a cage and the other was roaming freely on the plains. And I'm just going to I took a picture in order to prepare for this video, like a screenshot. I'm not sure about the technology of how to show you, but well, maybe I can. Maybe I can. It's not very clear, but anyway, because I'm holding the shutter in. One of these lions has security, free shelter, free food, and free medical care. The other lion has no insurances. Everything about his quality of life is his own responsibility. Be careful what you wish for. So the implication here is very much a conservative libertarian talking point, which is that what sounds good is actually kind of socialist state control. But I have a problem with the premise, and it also got me into thinking what my own views are, my own values are. I always call myself a centrist, and it's well placed. That's what I see myself as. Um, and often I've criticized the left. I've criticized what I consider to be the very controlling side of woke ideology, what I consider to be often left wing identity politics. I think it comes from the left more than the right. I think that the right responds to it, but I think it comes more from the left. The culture wars work both ways, and both sides are kind of fueling one another. I mean, just as a brief example, when we had the whole thing about statues, it was the left that was trying to decolonize history and decolonize the curriculum and resist whiteness and all that sort of nonsense. The right then responds to it, and they're accused of engaging in the culture wars. So, um, that's something I've never shied away from criticizing. But one thing that I perhaps associate myself a lot more with the left is in certain social programs. Now, in the United States, the guy that posted this, by the way, was an Indian. But I think it's a very American narrative, a very right wing American narrative, particularly sort of look at these things such as universal healthcare and have this knee jerk response. Oh, that's socialism. We can't have that in America. Um, but they're sort of conflating democratic socialist policies with hardline communist states. So, for example, what has long been normal in Northern Europe, in the Nordic states, in the UK for that matter, um, Americans seem to think, or rather those right wing Americans seem to think, that's Venezuela, that's China, that's Vietnam. Leaving aside the fact that many developing countries still don't have a fully functioning welfare state. Um, I understand concerns about communism. I loathe communism, and I don't particularly care for socialism either. And I find that often socialists are some of the biggest cheerleaders for totalitarian left wing states. I mean, I cringed when Fidel Castro died and self described socialists were lining up to praise him, totally disregarding his human rights abuses. So I am not a socialist. I would never call myself a socialist. But a policy like universal health care comes from democratic socialism. There's no way around it. That's what it is. And if I was to say that I am therefore against democratic socialism, I'd be a hypocrite. I mean, totally against it. Because I strongly support the principle of universal healthcare. I strongly support the minimum wage. I strongly support basic workers' rights, i.e., the right to be treated fairly at a place of work, the right to not work in degrading conditions, excessively long hours, the right to reasonable maternity leave, that sort of thing, the right to be paid fairly. Those are all things I strongly support. And that is definitely more to the left. Fine. That's the wing side of me, and I will defend it. And I think actually conservatives and libertarians get this wrong because they look at personal responsibility, which I believe in. They take it to another level of considering that everyone is on a level playing field. Therefore, everyone has responsibility. Therefore, no one should be given assistance. Or if they won't outright say that, they will really, really push back against it. I mean, the situation in this country is an example. It's true that there are people who overly rely on the welfare system and they abuse it. I've spoken about the subject a few times because I've been through the DWP. I know what that's all about. Um, and I will admit that there are people who abuse the system. That is wrong. It's wrong against the taxpayer and it's dishonest. And, they're not giving much to society in that sense. They're selfish in that sense. I also say that these people who sort of look down at the unemployed or they look down at claimants, they should be careful about that because they may find themselves one day relying on it. Coronavirus is an event that has hugely disrupted the world. So many people were furloughed. Many people found themselves relying on universal credit for the first time. Some of those people might have judged claimants in the past. So again, I'm not saying that people who abuse the system can't be criticized, but I loathe the way right-wing tabloids and others kind of castigate claimants as all, you know, lazy dole scroungers, to use a term that thankfully is kind of not used that much these days. It was more common in the early 2010s when the Tories had that hideous strivers versus scroungers posters. Um, So I believe in personal responsibility. I mean, this thing with Insulate Britain, one of my main criticisms is their arrogant notion that they've got a right to protest without considering the responsibility of their actions. Although I'm reluctant to call it protest. I think they're a bunch of extremists, and I'm with the majority on that one. I think there needs to be serious blowback against them. I do believe in responsibility. I believe we all have responsibility to society, but there are certain circumstances where government intervention is justified. Take, for example, in social care. If you have someone who needs 24-hour treatment, um, that person is not going to be in a position to have the same responsibilities as members of society, i.e., the majority who, for example, don't have severe motor neurological conditions, or people who have severe learning difficulties. There are people with limitations in terms of opportunities, in terms of what they can do. And that's not talking down about them, just the reality. Um, so, this idea that there's no place for government compassion, I think is wrong. I think that what we want to have is a situation where we uphold our values as a nation, as Britain, right? And the NHS is not just our health service, I think it's part of our culture. It's far from ideal. There are serious problems in the NHS, staff shortages, waiting lists. So, it is not perfect. But the principle of it, I think, is a very, very good one, universal healthcare. And I think it is outrageous that in the world's most powerful country, the United States, millions of people don't have access to basic healthcare. I mean, I was with your friends recently, and actually I saw it in The Big Bang Theory as well. Started watching The Big Bang Theory. Now, in both those shows, there was an episode where one of the main characters needed hospital treatment, and they had to fill in this insurance form. That just wouldn't happen in the UK. Um, Now, there is a debate around healthcare tourism, i.e., should people take advantage of our NHS? But I basically think it's a human right. If someone needs urgent medical care, they shouldn't have to be worrying about money in order to get that care. And yes, there's a responsibility factor. For example, if you smoke like a chimney and you get lung cancer, that's an issue of responsibility. If you are morbidly obese because you have a very bad lifestyle choice, again, there's responsibility there. But do I believe that someone who's morbidly obese should be denied treatment if they suffer a heart attack? No. Do I believe that someone should be denied treatment for lung cancer if they're a heavy smoker? No. I still say they should be treated because it's basic compassion. Um, and I think that that principle is a very good one. Minimum wage. You know, when that was brought in by New Labour, one of the Blair government's greatest achievements, in my opinion, the Tories were absolutely up in arms to say, oh, this will destroy business. That never happened. I understand for small businesses, there's more paperwork involved. I am somewhat sympathetic to them. But I take the view that if you can certainly open up another business, then you can afford to pay a decent wage to your workers. In return, can expect them to be efficient workers, to be reliable, and so on. And if they're not, then you can fire them. But I think the principle of the minimum wage is a very important one because the fact of the matter is, without the minimum wage, employers could legally get away with paying as little as they want. And conservatives might say, oh, well, you have a choice whether to work for them or not. I think that's a sloppy argument. I think if you're expecting someone to work for you, to put the hours in, to help your business, then it's reasonable that you pay them fairly. To me, it's just a basic question of fairness. You know, it's an exchange, exchanging labor for a fair pay. The employer gets the labor, the employee gets fair pay. I just don't think that's rocket science. Um, so, sometimes the American argument, particularly on the Republican side of things, is utterly absurd. They talk about how awful it would be to have universal healthcare. That's socialism. That's Venezuela. Rubbish. That's Britain and Norway. And it largely works as a principle. The system may not be perfect, but that is not to do because that's nothing to do with the foundations of the system. It's to do with issues like staff shortages and a host of other problems, lack of funding. There's a lot of issues going on there, complex issues. But anyway, I'll wrap this up. But I do not believe in this very cold dog eat dog world where, well, we all have responsibilities, so, everyone for themselves. I do believe in social responsibilities. I think Thatcher was dead wrong when she said there's no such thing as society. Um, I believe in social responsibilities, but I also believe in compassion. And I don't think the one contradicts the other. In fact, one reason I'm hardline on crime is precisely because I think criminals hurt society. I'm compassionate in being hardline on crime. I'm actually compassionate towards what victims need, which is accountability and justice. Anyway, that's my take. People are free to disagree, but I just think sometimes there's a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction to some democratic socialist positions, and it's an area where I'm happy to say I'm quite well to the left. I believe in universal healthcare. I believe in the minimum wage. I believe in treating people um, with a degree of compassion, and I believe government has a role to play in that. I also believe in social responsibility, and I think that everyone who's capable of doing so, i.e., they don't have severe um, medical restrictions, that they understand that they have responsibility. Um, Absolutely. So that's my take. Let me know your thoughts. Cheers.